Here. Vice Mayor Walter.
Here.
Councilmember Brigham. Here. Councilmember Turner.
I'm here.
Present. And those on the dais might want to put their mobiles on airplane mode to prevent interference. And may we have the report out of closed session?
Mayor, the council considered labor negotiations under closed session. No reportable action was taken. Staff was given direction.
Great, thank you. Conflict of interest declaration, are there any?
I have a conflict on the candidate.
Okay, and agenda review, changes or deletions?
Mayor, staff doesn't have any changes or deletions to the agenda.
Great. All right, moving right along. So we'll move on to public comment. Any person wishing to speak to the City Council on any item not listed on the agenda may do so at this time. Members of the public have the right to speak on any item on the council agenda during the item. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Each person wishing to speak must go to the podium when advised by the mayor and speak directly into the microphone. Each speaker may be limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is allotted. Would anyone like to come forward at this time and address us on an item that is not on the agenda? All right, well, then seeing none, we are going to move on to proclamations and presentations. And it's the Chamber of Commerce's opportunity. Welcome.
Fingers crossed, Kevin.
Come on.
We've had some technical challenges this afternoon, so. Well, apparently the Mercury was in retrograde this afternoon, earlier today, so.
I looked at my horoscope and it said spend time with friends.
And here you are.
Mayor Bagby, City Council, staff, and other department heads. My name is Nina Hanchett. I'm the director of the Cloverdale Chamber of Commerce. And with me is our admin, Savannah Hemphill. Janesse Brewer is on our board of directors, and Aaron Mavis is also a board member, our newest board member. So I'd like to, if you haven't seen them, met them, I'd like to acknowledge them. So the purpose tonight is basically to kind of, at a high level, go over our accomplishments from the last fiscal year, and then look at the things that we are considering for the 2019-2020. So one of the things that we're super proud of is our relationship that we forged with the city. It's been the partnership has been a couple of years now, and individually and collectively, I enjoy working with you as a group, individually, or whatever, right? We agree. And we have a chamber liaison, Jason Turner, newly elected council member. Marta is his backfill if he can't be there, and sometimes even if he can. So thank you for that, because it helps us kind of link up with what we're all doing, not to replicate that kind of thing. Just some of the items that we do on a regular basis that we haven't done before. Every new resident, whether they're renting or buying, is presented a new resident or a welcome to Cloverdale bag. That bag has a letter from Mayor Bagby, from Ron and I as the president of the chamber and the director of the chamber. Plus, we've encouraged our businesses to have promotional material, whether it's a flashlight, whether it's a rack card, whatever, to let them know that they're there. Our restaurants are encouraged to include a menu there. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? All they have to do is give us what else am I forgetting there, Savannah? We have a big box of things. So, important phone numbers, all kinds of things. So, those are delivered by hand, and many times when you ring the bell, people are there and you get to welcome them personally to our beautiful town. So, pretty happy with that. And then we also do our new collateral, which is a list of all the restaurants in Cloverdale, and I tell people it's pretty much everything from McDonald's to Trading Post. and our shopping guide, which lists all the different places for people to shop, constantly being revised. Things change. Okay, so we also have updated and continue to update the directional signage downtown. So when new businesses come in or names change or something happens, it's not too long before they have new signage. So like that too. Now we're going to talk about some of our marketing accomplishments. We produced a 1-minute Experience Cloverdale video, which was shown before each of the Alexander Valley Film Festival films last October. We took that and synthesized it, shortened it to 30 seconds for businesses to use. For example, the Raven Theater in Healdsburg is showing it, and we've sent it to several businesses in town to incorporate with their own marketing and promotion. If you haven't seen it, I'm happy to send it to you. I think we tried to put this on last time, and it wasn't going to work. What else? Oh, I've said the dine and drink guides, the shopping guides were stuff. And a couple of the things that we've done on behalf of the community are, we did the Spring Festival, which is the first Spring Festival that I even remember having. And it's only going to get bigger, better, and probably have a broader footprint. During the Spring Festival, we incorporated a treasure map so that people could visit downtown businesses, restaurants, merchants, whatever, and they had a map where if they visited the business, they got an X stamped on their map. They got 10 stamps, they could turn it in for a chance to win a beautiful basket. The basket was all of the participants on the map, and it was won by a new Cloverdale resident that lived off of River Road. So that was, you couldn't want it any better than that. We've increased our chamber membership. We seem to do that. I think I walk down the street and people want to cross the street. If you're not a chamber member, it's something that it's so important, because that's sort of the connective tissue that holds all this together. We have a chamber advisory board with 4 people that are part of the community, retired, and also have a perspective that's a little bit different than our day-to-day perspective. We meet with them quarterly to get their sort of guidance. They were at our retreat in January, and a different focus, a different level of strategizing, so it was very interesting. They were also, a couple of them were also at our State of the City breakfast. We have invited, this is the second year, we've invited 2 students from Cloverdale High School to participate on the board, and they're given a small scholarship at the end of their service. So we just awarded Julie Edwards and Eden Winifred, who also was the council liaison. They pretty much cleaned up at the awards ceremony. Pretty amazing young women. Okay. I talked about the treasure map. I've kind of already talked about it there, but there's the winner, surrounded by what is his name in the universe? Captain America. And then our Citrus Fair Queen, Ava Smith. And that's a booth at the picture on the lower bottom, the lower right is a picture at the Spring Festival, which we're going to do again. We're going to change it up some, look at some things that worked really well and look at some things we'd like to change. That's the treasure map where Experience Cloverdale. With Erin's guidance and help, we had our first ever summer sidewalk sale. And this year, we've announced August 10th as our second summer sidewalk sale. And it was a lot of fun last year. Downtown was busy. Shops were busy. It was good, shops and restaurants. We had our Winter Festival. Remember, Shirley said that a friend of hers from Santa Rosa said it was like a Hallmark movie, and it was. And the weather was perfect. It was cold. It was perfect. But I'm hoping for good weather this year too, because we're doing it again. we did I know I've talked about this already, but we did a State of the City breakfast at Trading Post, I think it was in April, early April, and we'd like to do that twice a year for people that are interested. And it was well attended, lots of good questions, lots of good information shared. We are working on a things to do and a services guide. All this stuff, this takes time and money. And we are working to develop a Hispanic advisory board. A little easier said than done, because the people that we want to have be part of that are super busy people, really busy people. People like Jenny Chamberlain, people like Elvia Osnaya, Marta Cruz. And so we're working on getting that nailed down. We're also in the very early stages of a welcome to Cloverdale signs coming into Cloverdale Citrus Fair, and definitely at the north end of town where that raggedy sign is now, just south of the Hamburger Ranch. I think we included a picture of it. So we're working on what that could look like. We're in the very early stages, and we hope with your support that we'll be able to welcome people to Cloverdale and include the fact that we are in Sonoma County. Anything else? That's sort of just a rendition of what it could look like. That backdrop is just a beautiful backdrop in the just a, you know, a landscape shot. But it's going to be metal, and the lettering is going to come out from the sign, and the colors, and it's going to be made out of steel, and it'll last for decades. So we're hoping that we have the wherewithal to put that together.
It's also being done by a local business here in town, which is always really great to be able to support local people.
And he's an artist. He can do anything. Roger Fletcher Fabrication. So, and that's the old sign. And we're going to give service organizations an opportunity to put their logos on, too, at the bottom. And it's like no matter where you go, you see signs like that. And like to be part of that. I think that might be it, but I'm open for questions.
Let's start on this side. Do you have any questions or comments? Jason?
So I've been enjoying being your liaison thus far. I think you guys are doing great work, and it's
Thank you.
great minds come together once a month, and things are absolutely moving forward.
We have a fabulous board, a board that is representative of the community, of business interests, of sort of strategic planners. I'm blessed. Can say no more.
Yes. Nina, could you could you please share with the public how you select your student liaison?
Absolutely. Marta, we offered that up to the counselor there and asked the school to make the decision based on the accomplishments of the individual. And then I interview them just to let them know what's involved and answer any questions or kind of clear up any hesitations or whatever. And that seems to have worked out very well. We have two. We have Elizabeth Ruiz and Janet Martinez this year, and both of them are dynamic, very, very nice women, very accomplished. And Janet was, she went to our Calpine trip with us, and she just did something else too. She showed up totally unexpectedly. It was awesome. I can't remember what it was, but it was nice to see her.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, Nina, we don't thank you enough for all the hard work you do over there at the chamber. You've got a dedicated staff of one, but you've got a super. We have
a lot of people to draw from.
You do, and you have a wonderful board of directors, and I know Ron is quite the taskmaster. But I just had one question for you on that 1 minute experience Cloverdale video production. Did we send that down to the Visitors Bureau for them to get up on their page, on their web page?
I know their information is on our website, but I do ping them all the time, and I'll make sure that gets up there. I've got some flag pictures I've sent them, and So if it isn't, I'll follow up on that. and make
Okay,
sure it
if you
is.
need help with that, let me know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to say thank you for all your hard work, and we probably don't thank you enough, but you're just, you and your staff and the board and everyone, it's just such a labor of love, and you're
It is a labor of
making-
love. I
You're
think for all
making
of
so
us.
much progress and so much change, and we just really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Back at you.
So, does that conclude your official presentation? Would anyone from the public like to come forward and ask any questions of the chamber? Just give the people an opportunity at this time. I think can blow kisses, that's fine. All right, well, let's see. Thank you. Thank you very much. And actually, I think you deserve a round of applause for all the work. Thank you so much. So, we'll move on to less interesting things like the consent calendar. All items under the consent calendar will be considered together by one action of the council unless any council member or member of the public requests that an item be removed and considered separately. Would anyone like to remove an item from the consent calendar from the dais? Any members of the public? All right, well, seeing none, may we have a roll call vote at your convenience?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that we accept the
Oh, sorry, and actually,
consent.
I believe I need a motion first, I apologize.
Thank you. That's
I
okay.
was getting ahead of myself.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve the consent calendar as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Now I think we're ready.
Councilmember Cruz?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Walter?
Aye.
Councilmember Brigham?
Aye.
Councilmember Turner?
Aye.
Mayor Becky?
Aye. So apologies, Sue, no one should be expected to do two things at once, so. Great. Thank you so much. And with that, do we have, let's see, hold on one moment. We're going to go to communications. Seeing none, we'll move on. So do we have any communications that we need to discuss, Mr. City Manager? No?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Not at this time, okay, great. So we'll move on to public hearings, a cannabis land use ordinance amendment. So please turn in your hymnals to page 52 to 133.
I'm going to have to recuse myself because
May I just thank Sue for numbering the pages?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, nice.
Except that she is trying to,
Oh,
we're,
okay, I won't bother.
we've had a few technical glitches this afternoon, folks, so please be patient with us.
Is there another presentation slide?
Would it be appropriate to move on to skip to new business for now while we figure out the slideshow issue?
Absolutely. We can come back.
Well, while we are figuring out our,
Actually, it's number 3.
number 3, well, no.
That was on the consent calendar, I
That's on the
believe.
consent. Actually,
Wasn't
could we bring Councilmember Brigham back? Jason, would you mind doing that? Sure. We'll move on. We're going to go ahead and move on to new business.
Services agreement.
Yeah, I think.
It wasn't pulled. It's passed.
Okay.
On the
Although,
consent.
actually, I think because things are a little bit of a rigmarole, we're going to call a 5-minute recess and let us hope that we're going to figure this thing out. Thank you very much for your patience. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. We're going to jump back into it, to our public hearings, Cannabis Land Use Ordinance Amendment. Who would like to take the lead?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to start the presentation, and both myself as well as our Assistant City Manager, Community Development Director, and our City Attorney will be weighing in on this particular presentation. Included in your packet is a fairly comprehensive agenda report as well as a redline version of the draft amended cannabis ordinance. So we're gonna walk you through it, the proposed changes today. First, we give you a little bit of background on how we got here today. Then we're going to talk about specifically the proposed amendments to the ordinance, and then finally seek council's direction to staff. Over the last year and slightly longer, council has been engaged in a policy discussion on amendment of the current approved cannabis ordinance. There was direction by council to look at some key issues and after a series of meetings, council kind of narrowed in and focused in on what the some key amendments, and that's what we're going to walk through this evening. What we really wanted to point out here is it's been the subject of a significant discussion over a number of meetings of the council, as well as the commission. And what you see in your packet currently is a reflection of that review process and recommendation by the Planning Commission. I'm going to jump right in. One of the key issues that was included in the amended ordinance is provisions for special events. When the original ordinance was adopted, the special events was not something that was addressed within the ordinance. There were subsequent changes to state law that provided for approval of cannabis events, and as such, direction by council was to include provisions in the ordinance to address temporary cannabis events, and that's reflected in section 18.05060 of the amended ordinance. It allows for the city manager to develop an appropriate application process for events, and also allows for the applicant to deny, or excuse me, to appeal to council if staff denies an event. And the council was fairly explicit that cannabis events should provide adequate security and traffic control measures, as well as meet certain separation requirements that are applicable to other cannabis uses. It's all by default too that all events would adhere to applicable state regulations that are set forth by the Bureau of Cannabis Control. So moving on, council did discuss quite at length the setbacks for schools, parks, youth centers, and residential uses. There was change in the language that reflected how the setback distances were measured, and what's included in the amended ordinance is some clarity that the distance would be reflected based on a straight line measurement from property boundaries rather than from location to location, because there's some ambiguity when you use that methodology. Moving on, this was a key amendment that council spent a lot of time on. This was a setback waiver provision. This allows for the commission to consider waivers of the setback requirements when there are certain factors that could be met, including impassable physical separation. So this is kind of a measure that provides for cannabis businesses to not strictly meet the setback requirements, subject to review and approval by the Planning Commission. And there's language in the amended ordinance that provides for this waiver process and ultimately review of the setbacks by the Commission when they don't meet the strict definition as set forth in the original ordinance. I think the intent here was to provide a little bit of flexibility and kind of build in some some factors of consideration other than just strictly looking at distance for certain cannabis uses. Moving forward, there's a number of changes and cleanup really throughout the amended ordinance that is really intended to reflect the new the implementation of new regulations by the Bureau of Cannabis Control. As when council adopted the original ordinance, the state was still going through the process of finalizing the state regs, and so staff undertook an effort to update the ordinance to make sure that we were as consistent with state law as possible. These changes are relatively minor, as noted here in the slide, and we also clarified some language around the sublicense, which was kind of a new provision that was added by the state regs that we currently, or that the current ordinance did not address. One of the other kind of more substantive changes to the ordinance that was reviewed and discussed by council centered around the issue of the number of permitted dispensaries. This is something that was talked quite a bit about during the development of the ordinance itself, and then ultimately subsequent to its adoption. The current ordinance provides for a maximum of 2. There was council support to consider moving from a maximum of 2 to 3, and the draft amended ordinance that's in the packet does reflect allowing up to a maximum of 3. I did want to note that that doesn't mean that there's automatically 3 dispensaries under that scenario. It just, the ordinance provides that language to allow for a maximum of 3. And right now, we have one, obviously, operational dispensary, and then one that's in the permitting process. So, you know, that we anticipate we'll have 2 currently. The way the ordinance is drafted would be, or the draft amended ordinance would provide for, you know, again, a maximum of 3, subject to the request for proposal process that is outlined in the ordinance. So, whoops. Similar to the update of the regulations within the ordinance, there's also you know, some cleanup items. Again, they're not substantial. They're not policy changes. There was reference to, or there is reference to, requiring a use permit rather than cannabis permit. So, you know, throughout the ordinance, there were updates to really reflect that the appropriate permit is a cannabis permit, not a use permit. One of the changes that was also made was with respect to the license types. There was reference to, or there is reference to all the license types within the current ordinance, and the staff's direction was to remove those license type reference in anticipation of future, you know, state changes, and so the license type numbers were removed from the ordinance that's before you this evening. So, kind of in summary, the key amendments really include the special events provision, the setback clarification of the method that's used to measure setbacks, the setback waiver that we talked about, where there might be some physical considerations to look at, the amendments to address new state regulations and cleanup items, and then last but not least, the increase in the number of dispensaries from 2 to 3. So really, I think at this time, it's an opportunity for council to ask any questions of staff about the proposed amendments. And what we may want to do, subject to council's discretion, is, you know, walk through these and get your, you know, your input on these proposed amendments as we've outlined here this evening. Obviously, we're here tonight as a public hearing, so you obviously want to open the public hearing and receive public input, and consider that input as part of the proposed amendment. So, some options for you tonight is to introduce the ordinance for first reading by title only and waive reading of the text, which would then amend Cloverdale Municipal Code Section 18.15, and by reference, that is your zoning code. Option 2 is to review and modify the draft ordinance, and then introduce the ordinance for first reading. And then last but not least, an option is to review the draft amended ordinance and provide direction on staff on next steps. So with this said, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor. You let us know how you'd like to proceed, and I think City Attorney Jose Sanchez would like to also make a comment about the land use table.
Mayor, if I may, just a couple of actually quick edits to the ordinance. Some of the changes didn't get put in the last moment. Quick edits and it's packet page 85, and this has to do with the special events provisions, and it is middle of the page. It's actually section 1815060H2. There's a note there. That note was there placed on while we were drafting the ordinance, that note should be removed, so that's not part of the ordinance. And then also for subsection 4, right below it, the first sentence should read, temporary cannabis events may only occur in zones where other commercial cannabis uses are allowed. It does reference the table, but it's not clear under what zone under the table. So those are the quick edits there, and then just for reference purposes, we ended up making some changes to the ordinance, to the beginning of it, to the title, and some of the recitals. Unfortunately, that also got shown as red line. That's not something that's changing on the previous ordinance. That was just something that changed between our staff drafts.
Gotcha. Is there any any clarification questions right now? So, any questions about ordinance or the editing right now?
Do you mind?
Yep,
Thank
please do.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. David, just a couple, I already know the answers to these, but I just want to make sure everyone else does. So if we were to approve the changes to the ordinance, particularly item number 5, that does not mean that we are going to be opening another dispensary at this time. We'll just have a holding place for one.
Correct. The provision you're referencing, Vice Mayor, is the,
Just the
Yeah.
opening, I got you.
Going from 2 to 3 dispensaries.
correct, the proposed change allows for an increase in the maximum number of permitted dispensaries. There are currently provisions within the ordinance that require dispensaries to be subject to a proposal process, what we identify as request for proposals.
Right.
And it's a fairly extensive process. And so there were no changes to the draft, or there were no changes to the ordinance proposed to amend the process by which cannabis dispensaries would be reviewed. It's really just changing the maximum allowable number from 2 to 3.
Okay. And then direction was given to staff to make that change or those changes. Was it at the March 13th meeting or the April 10th meeting? Do you recall offhand? I tried to find it today and I couldn't. But I just wanted to see if my recollection was correct. That when was it?
Yeah, I think we were just discussing, we believe, staff believes it was at the April 13th meeting. It was at a time when the council was discussing dispensaries, and there was some direction given to consider moving from 2 to 3.
From 2 to 3. And I think that was unanimously approved by the...
No, that was not. I gave very clear direction on that, and that was that we were going to consider it.
Consider it.
It was not direction to staff at this time to make that change. It
Okay.
was direction to bring it back for consideration.
And that was item number, I think it was 3, and we did a B amendment to that. Okay. So we were going to discuss it, but a few of us were okay with it, if I'm not mistaken. And then also at some point, I don't know when, I'd like to discuss the item that you and I spoke about with CBDs popping up in CVS and some other retail stores, including the smoke shop down across from the school. I just want to see how they're regulated, if they're going to be regulated, and how we're going to do that. So, thank you.
All right, any other technical questions at this time? All right, if not, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing and invite anyone from the public who would like to come down and make a comment on this item. And please do state your name and place of residence for the record.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council. My name is Bob Cox. I am the Vice Chair of the Planning Commission, and many of these changes you see here were discussed heavily at our Planning Commission meetings. One that has been a sticking wicket with many people in town is the number of dispensaries allowed. I was on the council when the draft became, it even became in existence way back, when we were the first city in the county to even start discussing this. There was no model. The number 2, number 3, whatever, would have been arbitrary at best. We had no idea what numbers to give it. It had to be probably more than 1, but we had arrived at 2, but that, I don't think that was firm at that time. We discussed it heavily at the Planning Commission recently, and we came to the determination that let the marketplace better let us know how many we need rather than us determining that ahead of time. We don't know if 2 is enough or if it's too many. So that's why the Planning Commission recommended the bump to 3 from 2. So that's my comment. Now on page, I have a question. On page 75 of the, pardon me, 77, right at the first paragraph, I'm a little confused on how this reads. The City Council may approve up to 3 commercial cannabis permits for 2 dispensaries. I'm not sure how that works. If you can make sense out of that, please let me know. Thank you.
That was simply a missed edit. Thank you.
That's when you're correcting, right?
I missed it, okay, so,
Yeah, this one.
okay. So when we discuss that later, we'll just make sure that that gets corrected. Okay, great. Would anyone else from the public like to come forward to discuss this item before I close the public hearing and bring it back?
Cloverdale. And I would like to know what a special events provision is. Is that like the wine industry where you have so many events per year?
Oh, great question. Who wants to handle that?
I'm happy to answer that. The name special event kind of speaks to itself in a way, but really what it provides for is...
Probably festival speaks to it.
Yeah.
A special event or a festival.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is for businesses that hold a valid cannabis permit. They are authorized under the state regs to conduct, what are defined as special events. So that can mean a number of things. It could be to bring folks together to have educational seminars around uses of cannabis products. It could be around education for how to have cooking classes. It could, and you can scale it from there to have very large fairs and festivals where you have a large number of people. Under the regs, it does provide for allowing smoking of cannabis in certain instances where smoking is permitted. In the legislation, when it was originally placed in the state regs, focused specifically on allowing special events only at fairgrounds. So there was kind of a sense of creating a certain environment around kind of cannabis events and festivals is similar to what you might see at a fair, for example. Obviously, there's also related regulations about the age of the patrons that can attend and ensuring that it complies with state law. And typically, again, that relates to being 21 years or older. But there's a lot of details that it's really dependent on the promoter of the event and how they want to structure it, who's invited, whether it's a public event that's open to the community versus a private event. So it's hard to kind of put specific parameters around it, but there is quite a bit of information within the, what's called the Business and Professions Code that gives really specific defined guidance on how events can be maintained and operated.
So my question somewhat is, would there be a limited number of events in Cloverdale? Is that something that council should consider? Is this something, an event that would be at Citrus Fair? I believe there was, Patrick did one a couple of years ago. But my question is, where are these events? How many are there? How many people does it involve? Would it be across from the junior or the middle school? You know, it seems sort of open-ended by just saying we're going to have events. And then the last thing, and I just think you should think about it instead of just saying, oh, let's do events. Because, you know, at the wineries, you know, they have a limited number of events they can do out on Dry Creek, for instance.
Good point.
So please think about it.
If I may?
Yes, please.
Mayor. So I know the regulations are very detailed. There's also, you know, as David mentioned, the definition is a temporary cannabis event license authorizes a licensed cannabis event organizer to hold a temporary cannabis event where the on-site sale and consumption of cannabis goods is authorized at the location indicated on the license during the date indicated on the license. The way that this ordinance was structured was it really required a city manager to approve a temporary cannabis event permit with the appropriate conditions. As part of that process, there's not a limit as far as that you can only do 1, 2, but there is a process that the city manager will establish in looking at whether that's the right location. The law that the city manager did point out that changed, where it was normally just at the county fair events or district agricultural association events. Now it's a temporary cannabis event may only be held at a county fair event, district agricultural association event, or at another venue expressly approved by the local jurisdiction for the purpose of holding a temporary cannabis event. That's what we try to do here in this ordinance, which is we define where, as far as the zones where other commercial cannabis uses are allowed, and also allowed only through a process, which was the permit process, giving wide discretion for, you know, is this the right location? Is there, you know, is it too close to something? There's no location requirements. But that's all part of the conditions. That's all part of the requirements that the requirements that the city manager will be also creating through the appropriate application process.
I can't tell, you're not at the podium anymore. You're so small. Does that answer your question, though? Or did you have a specific recommendation you wanted to make around events?
Well, I just think it's something that should be thought through, because if it's open-ended, it's very hard to go back and say, oh, sorry, we didn't mean you could have 10 events a year. Really, you should only have 3. Or, I mean, I know it's been a very difficult thing in the wine industry with the community at, you know, you just, all of a sudden, there's lots more people. There's lots of noise, there's lots of music, and I just am not clear as to what the intent is here. But if it's like the wine community, I think it needs to be regulated in a similar way so that it's clear to everyone in the city, well, what's happening here.
Great, thank you. What I'll do is I'll bring that when I close the public hearing portion. We'll have a discussion around events. Okay. Great, thank you. Any other comments from the public regarding the ordinance? Okay. I'm just going to make a note we are just also going to be just quickly touch on events as well. Okay. All right. would anyone else, if this is your last chance, would anyone else from the public like to come forward and comment on this item? Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, well, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais for discussion. And what I'd like to do is take it bullet point by bullet point, and we'll tack on any comments or questions about the event section at the very end. Okay. So, or actually, you know what? That's actually the first bullet point. That's right. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure we didn't miss you. So we'll take it on first. Great. So I'll go to the council. Any questions or comments about events?
Jose, are you familiar with the regulations that the member of the public was referring to around the wine industry to give us some comparison?
No, I know.
Mayor, Council, if I can, to address that question. Typically, just to speak to wineries for a second, typically wineries operate under a use permit, and the use permit usually will contain conditions around the number of events that can be held, and the manner and the magnitude of those particular events, and that will provide guidance. One of the things
typically located in the county, isn't that correct too? So that it's typically like in an agricultural area, not an urban area. So so the events have more of an impact to their neighbors. If that's what I understand.
Correct. And what I want to share with council is what you see tonight is language in the ordinance that provides for or allows special events. What you're not seeing, however, which would, if council approves the ordinance or approves that language, is actually the special event application and the associated fee. That's something that if council supports the idea of establishing a special event provision, and I do want to make this comment that the state, through their regulatory process, is nearly making it in a manner that you almost have to allow for it if you provide for cannabis businesses. So we have to be careful if we decide to not exercise that provision in the ordinance. But with that said, what we would need to do is come back to the council with a special event application that would set forth the requirements, and that would provide the opportunity for council to provide specific requirements around the size and magnitude of event, what are the measures that the event holder would need to implement to hold a successful event. I know when we had a conversation around this, when there was a previous event proposed, there was a lot of discussion about things like safe traffic control, parking, signage, waste management. So there's a whole set of issues that, with any event, whether it's a cannabis center event or not, that go into ensuring that an event is planned in a safe manner for the community, and doesn't create externalities or impacts that go beyond the event itself. So those are kinds of things that you're not seeing tonight, because we would need to get your support and approval for that provision first. And ultimately, there's a fee component that goes along with it. And I can say the state has implemented quite an extensive permit application that's available online. And the fees are, in my opinion, somewhat prohibitive to organizations or businesses that would want to host a lot of events, because it kind of ratchets up the cost pretty significantly, just in and of itself with the license fees that they're going to pay to the Bureau of Cannabis Control.
I have one more follow-up. In the event that we get an onslaught of requests for events in any particular year, it seems to me the way it's written, it's within our authority as a council to just simply say, we believe Cloverdale's had enough. Please try again next year. Did I interpret that correctly?
There's currently no restriction on the limit or number of events.
Forgive me, let me clarify. Are we still approving each individual event as a council? Is that the way it's written currently?
The current provision is to allow the city manager to approve those events. Obviously, if it became an issue or a problem, staff would understand that we would be in a position to deny future event requests if we felt like it was an undue impact to the community. And in the case the applicant felt that that was unfair, they could then appeal it to
Appeal,
council.
that was it, okay,
Yeah.
it comes to us for an appeal. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, I just want to make sure that people understand that in section 18.15069, it clearly, that is page 85 of the PDF and 31 of the other. It clearly states that this may only occur in permitted zones listed on table 1, so there's reference, and that temporary cannabis events are not required to follow distance and/or separation requirements applicable to the other cannabis uses in this chapter. However, they must comply, and this is very key for people to understand, that they must comply with any and all state laws and regulations related to location and distance requirements. So there's going to be no, what would you say, no loophole? There's total clarity on what has to happen and how.
Well, thank you, Janae, for pointing that out. That one kind of slipped by me. I'm surprised because I would like to see us put a limit on the number. And I understand what the state is saying, but we can surely maybe do something where if it's more than 3, the 4th one has to come in front of the city council. And then at that point, at least we have some control over it. But I'd be comfortable with probably 3. 3 seems to be a good number for me tonight, so. But I do think we should regulate it, and thank you.
If I can make a recommendation, even at that 3, as the city manager pointed out, the application process and the regulations are still not established. I think we're listening to loud and clear, that this may be an issue, that the amount of events placed is an issue. I think that that's one of the considerations in this application process that the city manager can take into consideration as far as denying permits and kind of the enough's enough type of provision. I think that that's something we could do even without putting it in the ordinance if the council didn't want it in the ordinance.
I'm not sure it needs to be in the ordinance, and here's why, is that I'm completely sympathetic with the folks who are out in the country who are being impacted by, large winery events, but I think it's really apples and oranges here. Our Citrus Fair is located in the heart of the town, and we already have the Citrus Fair event on a regular basis. It's an event center. It is a place that is supposed to be hosting events. The only other semi-eligible place, according to the state language, would be the Grange Hall. And it would just be completely inadequate because it's an agricultural associated organization. So those are the only 2 places that we have that are eligible for. And of course, and the Citrus Fair, it's not like you're trying to, have events that don't belong there. I think that probably the February Citrus Fair has more impact, has more light, has more noise than any other event, and I can't honestly see a cannabis event even touching that. I mean, if you go to my backyard, I can hear the screams from the roller coasters, for the entire week of Citrus Fair, and it doesn't bother me because when I moved there, I knew the fairgrounds was there, and I actually kind of enjoy it because I don't like to ride roller coasters anymore. I like being able to walk to and from, and so. To me, it's just that to limit events in an existing event center just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that if we were inundated with them, like there was one a week, then the council would want to come back and say, hey, wait a second, this is, we are having a huge festival per week. It's impacting people being able to have, local birthdays and anniversaries and retirement parties, which is what we use the Citrus Fair for. It's impairing our ability to have the crab feed there and stuff like that, then I think it's going to become an issue. But I just can't imagine right now that we would have so many people clamoring to have events every single weekend at the Citrus Fair. That would be an issue. So, if the council is going to insist on there being a limit per year, 6 is a reasonable number, but I just think that right now it would be reasonable to just see how many applications we actually get. Leave it up to the city manager's good judgment. If it's a really good application, let's develop a really good, tight application and fees that are fair and reasonable expectations. I think I'd rather put my energy into doing that. And then revisit, if it does become a point where we're just getting inundated with the applications, then we could come back and say, well, we're really only interested in having, let's face it, there's 52 weeks in a year, even 10 would be a lot, and I can't imagine that we're gonna get that many, and we might ultimately wanna limit it to 6, but it's just that right now, there's no reason to. So I would feel more comfortable putting our energy into developing the application and our fee schedule and our expectations, and then we can just revisit, and it won't require a change in the ordinance. We can just change the application rules, and we do that at the administrative level. Is that?
I could live with that. And just for some clarification, I think, Madam Mayor, Janae, you mentioned that somebody in the past had put on an event in Cloverdale, and Patrick did not put on an event. Nobody did. So.
And actually, his application would be a model for how it would probably be the starting point for our application. His proposal would probably be a starting point for our application process, because it was so broad. And I would probably start with that and then go from there. It did come before the council, but it wasn't pursued at the time. So, okay. So do we have consensus around does staff have what you need for direction? Okay, great. So then we'll move on to setback clarification method used to measure setbacks, and I'll start on my right this time. Do you have any questions or comments about the setbacks? Okay. Is there consensus?
I'm fine with standardizing the language. I think it's helpful.
Okay, great. And we have setback waiver. Any questions or comments about language? Okay, so there's consensus on that. And then we're moving down to new state regulations related amendments. Is any questions or comments regarding? No, those were pretty straightforward. Okay, and we'll move on to the number of dispensaries. So any comments or questions?
What about the updating of license types?
Did I miss that? Update to hold on a second. State setback waivers, new state regulations related to amendments. You're right, I missed that.
Are they the same thing?
No, there's actually a separate bullet point. New state regulations related to the amendments. Do you want to clue us in on that?
As far as the types go?
Yeah.
What we ended up doing under the new state regulations related amendments and the cleanup, we ended up taking out the specific types, because those change. And that's an example is your, what is your type 9, which is your delivery. But that didn't exist when we started the ordinance, so we didn't have that type in there. And what we have found is, things have changed, and things will change as far as the types. We didn't want to come back every single time, so we just described what the use is, and then whatever associated type at that time, that's what it would fall under.
Yeah, then we're not constantly going back. So, did you have any questions?
Well, that just kind of prompts another question. I understand for the license types, but what about other mandates that come down from Sacramento? Are we going to have to go in every quarter and update our ordinance, or how are we going to do that?
Only if it conflicted. A lot of times, no matter what we say, the businesses have to comply with state law. It's only if there's a conflict. The only time where we would want to come back is if there was a conflict, or we could expand even further to capture a new change in the state law that maybe it made it discretionary, and we wanted to make it mandatory, or whatever the council wanted to do. That's when we would come back. But we're pretty comfortable right now, hopefully, knock on, and as soon as I say that, probably next week something will come down, right? But we're pretty comfortable, at least with the flexibility now, that all the requirements the council wanted are in here, and state law still needs to be complied with.
Thank you.
All right. Then we'll move on to a number of dispensaries. Questions or comments? Do you support leaving it at 2 or changing it to 3?
Madam Mayor, thank you. I attended the planning commission meeting where this was discussed to ensure that I felt, and this may sound rude, and for that I apologize, but I wanted to ensure that the dialogue that went on was substantive. And I believe it was, and we had a new council member, or a new planning commissioner present, and the dialogue was debated heavily, and ultimately the planning commission made this recommendation after we as a council brought it up, and therefore I support 3.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I also support 3, and let me tell you why. You know, right now, we currently have 2. One is going through the process, and one is already open. I just don't want to send the word out there to the community that we're stopping at what we have now. If there's somebody that wants to come into Cloverdale and open a dispensary, and it meets all the criteria, it's kind of like storefronts on the boulevard. You know, our inventory, you know, I'd like to have the ability to do 3 now so that we don't have to go through the process of changing the ordinance. So I'm in favor of 3.
Now, it has 2,
Right.
and what's on the table is making a change to 3.
Right.
Just to clarify. Go ahead.
Well, this process has been on the table for a while, and we haven't had anybody else come and apply for a permit for another. We've had 3 applications. That's all the applications that we've seen in Cloverdale. So I am pro-business, but I am pro successful and viable businesses. I would like to observe how these 2 go, and I would like to see if anybody else comes about. So far, nothing. So I would agree to keep the ordinance as it is for 2 dispensaries.
May I? Sure. Just, I agree with you. Nobody has come forward. So as a result, if we had 3, nobody would still come forward. But we'd be ready to accept them if they did. Ultimately, they're coming in front of the city council for us to approve. Just because there's 3, it doesn't mean that somebody is going to be able to get their dispensary permit without coming through the city council. So, I mean, I could live with 2. I prefer to have 3. This item is going to come up again, and I'll again push for 3. I just want folks to know that we're not limited to 2. So that's why I'm in favor of 3.
Well, I'm going to start with the facts, and that is that before I was elected, I attended the meetings where the development of the ordinance was discussed. When I was elected, I thoroughly read my packet, and in that packet was information from the state with estimates about how many dispensaries an area could support per capita. And if my memory serves, it was about 10,000 people per dispensary. By settling on 2 dispensaries, the council knowingly decided to overestimate the number of dispensaries that our population, our city population and our trade area could support. And it concerns me that the Planning Commission was discussing this item without the complete information as to how that number was originally arrived at. So since our population hasn't changed that much, and we're already over by about, about 11,000 on the estimate, I think it's just wise and prudent for us to stay with the 2 licenses right now. So I'm just, I can't, in addition to the fact that we're not being inundated and flooded with competent, reasonable dispensary applications from multiple businesses. So for that reason, and because I've also been approached by several folks in Grocery Outlet and in Dahlia and Sage, and pretty much every place I go, asking me, why this issue continues to come up. So I think people, for the most part, are pretty comfortable with 2, and so for now, until The cannabis entrepreneurs are beating a path at our door. I want to go ahead and keep the ordinance as is and leave it at 2.
Madam Mayor, I have a question. If there were more applicants, there could always be a revision. Isn't that a possibility?
Absolutely, it could always come back. But
Okay.
I think that, right now, we also have an interest because we have an excise tax where we collect, and a portion of sales, and we get a portion. We have a vested interest in making sure that all of the dispensaries in the nascent state of the industry are successful, so that we can continue to recoup our considerable investment in developing this ordinance. And for that additional reason, I think I want to keep it at 2. Okay. So any other discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Let's defer to our Vice Mayor, shall we?
Okay. I'd like to see if there's any new per capita information on how many dispensaries we should have now that a lot of it's out of the shadows and come forward. So let's see if 10,000 is still the same number.
But it's actually, it would be in an old
And-
packet, so we could look that information up.
Yeah, I'd like to see if there's new numbers. And basically what you're saying is if we're going to rely on that, then we're not going to accept any more applications till we hit 30,000. So, I mean, we shouldn't even have 2 in there. I mean, it's silly.
We've already rounded up pretty well with 2, so, okay, go ahead.
The only comment I want to make in addition is we have made comments as a council that we are willing to see further applications, even though at this point we have all acknowledged that no new ones came out. And what I find coming to mind, because I don't want to oversaturate the market. However, if we don't have any sort of wiggle room within it to allow us as a council to make a determination, there is no incentive for anybody to apply until one of the existing fails. And I just feel like it might hinder our ability to even see what might be out there. Now, if things carry on the way that it's showing, it better be a damn good application before it's going to really get us to come along with it anyhow. And so what I believe having 3 would do is it still just leaves the opportunity for someone to be able to apply. And as far as arguing between 2 and between 3 and whether it's arbitrary and whether it's not and whether populations support it, it's hard to argue with the numbers. If in fact it suggested 10,000 per dispensary, what can I say? 2 is obviously a number that went above that. But if the goal is to still encourage individuals to bring their ideas to Cloverdale, it's almost at this point we're only inviting them to do that based on the failure of another. And that's one thing that I just have nagging at me a little bit. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Sure.
I don't believe that neither one of our dispensaries are going to fail. I'm very positive. I think the city is supporting this effort quite a bit. There's nowhere in the ordinance that it reads, you cannot apply, you cannot be interested, you cannot come to Cloverdale. On the contrary, we have a very good Chamber of Commerce that just made a presentation earlier today, encouraging business development. And the city manager and staff is always open to receive anybody who is interested in investing time and money in Cloverdale. So I don't see that this is an obstruction or a lack of an invitation to business people, to entrepreneurs with a vision. We all need to share a vision. And at this point, our vision ought to be the success of the existing businesses that we have. And to have an example for others to meet up to what these businesses are going to be doing in the next year.
Madam Mayor, if I could just say, it's quite obvious that there's not going to be 3 votes tonight to move for 3. Why don't we move on to the next? And as a result, because of not being 3 votes, it'll stay at 2. But I really think when folks come to town and say, geez, I'd like to open a dispensary here, they're going to go to City Hall, and City Hall's going to say, well, we only can have 2, and we already have 2. And people are going to leave.
Point of clarifying information. I really feel compelled that I need to share this. The motif of my concern or argument was not to bank on the failure of existing businesses. It was the
Thank you.
optics in which an applicant may be coming to town. I don't want to argue the point anymore, but I felt very compelled to say I do not wish failure on any of the established businesses. Thank you.
And we'll bring this up again, I'm sure, when the next round comes. I'll make sure it's in there, so.
Certainly. Okay, so it looks like there is not consensus to change that from, we'll be staying with 2. And so the last item would be the cleanup items.
Well, how about the zoning?
Oh, no, let's clean, the last one is,
Oh,
oh, sorry, I was going off the, I'm going off the,
Okay.
or do we need to touch on zoning again? I thought we were,
Page 53, item number 6.
what do you think, David? Did we give you direction on that, or do we need to discuss that as well?
That's why you guys need paper.
Well,
You know, your fingers
unfortunately-
can't move fast enough on
Well,
those
no,
things.
unfortunately, the PDF page numbers are not accurate, so we are really having to
Okay.
shuffle through. Yeah, the PDF page numbers did not get updated, so, okay. So, sorry, did you want to go over zoning location of cannabis business? Yeah,
I'm-
actually,
I'm
I think
fine
it's
with where
left
it
off-
is.
It's left off of the
So
bullet point,
Mayor,
so-
if I may, I think the comment was just on the direction, and does say the council, the city council discussed the zoning for various cannabis-related businesses and did not amend the zoning location of cannabis businesses. So I
And
think
that's why it's not, that's why it's not open for
That just
discussion
lists the
right now.
direction that we received, or
Right.
the conversation that the council had.
Right, so just that final item on cleanup items, the minor amendments. Did you have any questions or comments about that?
No, I'm done with this.
Yeah, yeah. Nope. I think we're almost cleaned up. All right, does staff have adequate direction on each of the bullet points?
So
I think the direction that we hear is that council, just walking through the items that are on the list here, you know, in terms of special events, council seems to agree with the current provisions, or the amended provisions to allow for special events. Obviously, that means that if you adopt that language, that we'll need to bring back a special event application that would be subject to council review. Council supports the revised language regarding the setback, that it would be measured in a straight line distance rather than from location to location. Council supports the setback waiver process for businesses that may not be strictly in compliance with the setbacks, but obtain planning commission approval of a waiver. Then there's the new state regulation amendments and the cleanup items that are kind of littered throughout the ordinance. And then last but not least, the issue of the dispensaries. The draft ordinance that's included in your packet identifies changing from 2 to 3. Based on kind of the council's discussion, to get support for approving it is to really keep it, revise the language back to reflect that the maximum number of permitted dispensaries is 2. And I think, Jose, if I'm correct, that council can with those amendments, introduce and waive first reading so that we can bring it back for adoption at next meeting. But if you could weigh in on that.
That is correct. At this, if council made those changes, you could make those modifications and introduce the ordinance as modified.
Do we have a motion?
Can I potentially go through
like to go
what
through each one?
I've heard
Okay.
of the changes, given what the city manager just said regarding not increasing? So your draft packet, your draft ordinance that's there, it would be the draft ordinance with the following modifications. The title would change to reflect it taking out the reference to increasing the number of dispensaries. Section 1815.050C1 on page 77 of the packet would be taking away the references to 3, changing them back to 2. 1815050D on page 78 of the packet would also be changing the reference back to 2. And then we would, of course, any other references, I don't think there's any other ones, but that are in the ordinance would be changed back to 2. Also, the previous changes that I just read into the record for the special events provisions, it's changing 1815-060H2 to remove the note. That was more of the editing note for staff. And also changing the first sentence of 1815-060H4 to state temporary cannabis events may only occur in zones where other commercial cannabis uses are allowed. So if there's a motion, if it could just say as amended, if the maker of the motion agrees with those.
Is there a motion?
I move that this ordinance is accepted with the described changes.
You want to read the number?
And the number is Title 18, zoning. And so you want me to read the whole thing? Okay.
This is a hard one.
Yeah.
So,
We just want to make sure that we say the right
absolutely.
thing. Hopefully, the attorney will not make a mistake, right?
Oh, the pressure's on.
That's right.
Okay. So I move that it is approved, the introduction of ordinance for first reading by title only and waiving reading of the text, amending Title 18, zoning by amending and replacing Chapter 18.15, cannabis, to add provisions related to temporary cannabis event permits, expand sections related to setbacks and waivers, and make modifications due to changes in law and other minor amendments. As amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, may we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 Aye. Great, thank you very much. Why don't we just take a little 5-minute break and we'll get Councilman Brigham. We're going to call the meeting back to order and continue on with item number 5, appointment of planning commissioner. That's Mr. Thompson.
Yes. Mayor, council members, Kevin Thompson, Assistant City Manager, Community Development Director. This item is the appointment of Chad Essay to the Planning Commission as a regular member. Mr. Essay is proposed to take over for Commissioner Bylon, who recently resigned. So he would be taking over for Commissioner Bylon, whose term was to March 2020. Mr. Essay was one of the participants that we interviewed in earlier this year. The mayor and I went through a series of interviews with many interested candidates. So we did that. He has a background in resort development and sustainability. He currently works for Sonoma Clean Power. I know he's here tonight, so I don't know if he'd like to come down and introduce himself, but our recommendation tonight is by motion, approve the mayor's appointment of Chad Essay as a regular member of the Planning Commission.
Chad, you want to come on down and
Say hello.
say hello to the family?
Hello, and my name is Chad Acey.
Sorry about that.
No,
Sorry.
apologize. This is how you become family, because the name Acey, once you can pronounce it right, I know you're not a salesperson calling me, so. I'm excited. I have a background in hospitality before resort and community development, and it's embedded this root of service to the community, service to my family, and I really believe in service, so I'm excited to serve our community here. We moved to this area. We were given a few locations around the state to choose from, and we loved the wine country area. We loved Healdsburg, where we lived for multiple years, and thought, what could be better than Healdsburg? And so we came up with Cloverdale. We feel like it's the future. And so I'm excited to serve this community, and thank you for this opportunity.
Apologize for the name.
Oh, don't apologize.
Well, you know, he's a sales guy.
Thank you, Chad, and once again, thank you for volunteering your time. It's a big commitment, and I see the role as planning commission is even expanding even more over the years. And I will definitely call you and set up a date where we can sit down and have some coffee and just chat about the future of Cloverdale. So, thank you.
Martha, did you have any questions?
Well, I had the pleasure to meet him during the break, and very happy to share that he has a vision for Cloverdale. Thank you.
I'm good with it. Welcome to Cloverdale and welcome to the Planning Commission. You're going to be stunned at how much reading you're going to have to do.
Jason, do you have anything to add, or?
No, I'm happy that you applied. Everything on here looks better than mine ever did, and they let me be on there, so welcome. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you, Chad, for stepping up and volunteering. It's great to see like the next generation step up and step into leadership roles, and we just really appreciate you coming and giving your service. So, does anyone from the public have any questions or comments or words of warning for Chad? Here.
No, here comes Bob.
Uh-oh, here comes trouble.
Chad, I know you haven't taken the oath yet, but welcome to the Planning Commission. I just have a little sidelight because it's in this item, and it has to do with the terms, the year terms. They're all kind of screwed up if you look at the chart, and they need to be set so that we have 3 every 4 years and 2 the opposite 4 years, so that you get on that. Otherwise, you could get in trouble somewhere down the line. Thank you for that. Welcome again.
So,
I think it's a result of having many planning commissioners take over for people who resign, so we've kind of got this mixed match of years, so we can look at options for that.
great.
I'm sure you'll straighten it out. Chad, welcome. Welcome to Cloverdale. Thank you, and stop by the office anytime if you have questions or want any guidance.
Yeah, you owe him a welcome packet.
I do.
It's been 3 years.
Yeah, but still.
Oh, man. It'll be a big package.
You'll get your custom package.
There you
What
go.
did that presentation say? Everybody knocks on the door? Wasn't that?
Knock on the door.
Just kidding.
There we
Well,
go.
we just did that. We started a while ago.
Well, thank you, and thank you for taking the hazing like a gentleman. Is there a motion to bring forward the nomination?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve your recommended appointment of Chad Assey to the Cloverdale AC. Say it one more time.
Oh, hey.
Chad Assey to the Cloverdale Planning Commission.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
All right. May we have a roll call, please, Sue?
Councilmember Bruce,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wolfert,
Aye?
Councilmember Brigham,
Aye.
Councilmember Turner,
Aye.
and Mayor Bagley.
Aye. And thank you again.
AC.
Thank you and welcome.
Every time now. AC. I got it.
Never forget it now.
Every time now.
Just think you need the air conditioning.
All right, okay, so on our next, that's right, you just need, actually, you need the heat compressor, or the heat exchange? The heat exchange, there you go, exactly, we'll work on it. The integrated heat pump water heater, thank you very much, we'll work on that. Okay, we're moving on to item 6, we're gonna consider options on next steps for rubber mulch in Cloverdale's parks and provide direction to city staff. And who would like to take that?
Mayor, council members, this item is our discussion of the rubber mulch that's installed at all 4 city parks underneath the play structures. In light of some citizens' concerns, and at the request of Councilmember Turner, the council did approve an ad hoc committee, which has met twice. During those meetings, we've had some good discussions. At the last meeting, it was decided that we should bring forward this item to the city council with some estimates, which I've put together. You can see in your agenda report. We have an estimate to remove all of the mulch and replace it with wood chips is about $115,000. That includes a $10,000 contingency. You can see it's broken down into the different tasks. The first task would be to remove it. We have a bid from a local contractor to do that. Recology would provide dumpsters at the site where the mulch would be put into. The good news about this estimate and this whole scenario is that the mulch would be hauled off to the landfill, a certified landfill, so we wouldn't have to deal with it at the corp yard in the future. I don't think there'd be any savings if we brought it to the courtyard. Not included in here was an estimate to actually take it from the parks to the courtyard, which I suspect would be similar to what Recology is asking to actually haul it off entirely. So again, we have all the different tasks broken down. There's about 4 tasks. Hector's here tonight too to answer any questions regarding, he helped a lot with putting this together. This is not currently in the 18-19 budget or the budget you just adopted. So if we want to move forward with this, we would need a budget amendment. So we are just seeking direction. I know there's some people in the audience who'd like to speak about this item as well. So that concludes my presentation, and we're here for any questions.
Any initial questions for staff on this? Okay, with that, I want to open it up to the public. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Maureen Nettleton, and I want to thank everyone for their time on this matter. Last time I was in front of the council and the citizens, there wasn't a lot of information that I had about how dangerous the rubber mulch was. It was more about the toxicity, the smell when it was heated up, and the cancer that could be caused from rubber mulch, its tires, so we know that there is cancer-causing elements. But since then, as of May 2019, there's been new studies coming out. There's been rubber mulch tested, and it has over 700 times the legal limit allowed for any item that is deemed for children. So it is made from pulverized rubber tires. It's not a children's toy. It's not tested to be a child's toy, and it's on our playgrounds where all of our children play. So I thought that was a big deal. The lead was not something that I was aware of before May of 2019. So we've discussed this with Gus and Jason and other members of the staff, and I just wanted to bring that up, that's why I feel that we need to move forward with getting it removed from the playgrounds. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward at this time? And do just remember to state your name for the record.
My name is Amber Romandi, and I'm thanking you guys for taking a vote on this today. I've been involved in the discussion since the beginning, and I have given you guys lots of information about things that say that there's like 96 chemicals, 12 of which are carcinogenic, and I do just want to emphasize the same thing that Maureen emphasized, because in the meetings there's been some concern that there was old information, because a lot of it was from 2013. I believe the tires went in 2014, so it is relevant to the tires that are there now. But the new information is from just 1 month ago, and I do want to make a correction. It was 70 times the amount of safe lead, but that's still an exorbitant amount. I would hope that you guys in your vote tonight would consider just the safety of our children and take that new study into account that was done in Washington, D.C. on May 7th. And no blame for anyone who sits on the council who put it in the first place. I'm aware that, you didn't know the dangers at that time, so. Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public like to come forward? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and bring it back to council. And Hector, you're probably going to need to be handy. And we'll start to my right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me assure you that the safety of the community is paramount with this city council. And I have the privilege of serving on the ad hoc committee with Councilmember Turner, who chairs that. But let me just give you a little background of how we got here today. December 10, 2014 was when the city council, and I was on the city council at that time, approved the use of the rubber mulch. And in the records here, we have reports from different companies that touted as being safe. And I understand that things change. And over the last couple of years, I've seen on Channel 7, Finney on our part, or whatever his name is, coming out saying, or just asking the questions, are the chips safe? This is a significant outlay for the city, over $100,000 to get this cleaned up, when in fact, when you know, I mean, other than some articles, we're not sure if we're talking about the same product in our playgrounds. This was certified safe by the Cal Recycle when they sold it to us. And like I said at our meeting, the last ad hoc meeting, I could have the Pope come and tell you that this is safe, but it's not going to convince the community. So I'm going to support whatever my fellow council members want to do on that, but I just want to give you some clarification that we really, we haven't tested the rubber that's on our playgrounds. When we put it in, we were told that it was safe, and there's testament to that through different testing. So I just wanted to give a little background. Thank you.
Yes, I want to make sure that the public understands. I want to make sure that the public understands that the council that approved this did it in the best faith and with the best heart. Perhaps in the future, council will look further and conduct some research to make sure that there's safety and that there's health in the community with anything that is exposed to children or to anybody else. This is not in the budget, but it is a priority. At the same time, I want the public to understand that this council has moved against pesticides with the same heart of safety and health for the community. This also comes with a weight, with some weight, and the weight is that we need to be aware of the limits that we have in our budget and how services might be impacted by these unexpected and unplanned expenses. But then again, the safety and health of the community is first. So I'm very much for correcting this. That was never intended to be, and it was never intended to be something to impact the community negatively, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. And I also want the community to understand that because we also have turned away from pesticides, we might have more weeds, more grass, and not as much attention because we will not have additional staff to take care of all the obligations that they already have. So with that in mind, we also request that the community is thoughtful about this and that the community understands that we are trying as hard as we can with as little as we have available when it comes to financial resources. Okay? Thank you.
Sure. I was involved in a lot of the planning that went into this, and we looked at several different options as to what we could do with this rubberized mulch in lieu of, and it was amazing the amount of, we don't want to fool with that. I do consider myself a pretty fiscally conservative individual. I don't really feel comfortable throwing $115,000 when our annual budget this year is already projected to operate at a $382,000 deficit. But when all the agencies that we tried to work with cited their reasoning for not wanting it, it's hard to stand on the argument that we're comfortable keeping it in playgrounds. I feel that if we don't take action now, it could very well be more expensive later. It's almost a guarantee it'll be more expensive later. And I really don't want to be the person who was on the council who let this kind of slip through and something does come back from a study. Somebody does dedicate some resources to really finding this out. This whole thing has really been a 6-month mark on me being sworn into this city council. There is no right, easy answer here. There is spending a lot of money, or there is gambling with potential for public health. I wanted the experience of participating in an argument with no easy answer. Well, here we are. And honestly, my gut tells me we gotta get this stuff out. And again, I'll just conclude with, when Fish and Game says, no, you can't put it anywhere near the water, why would we keep it by the children? And I just have a hard time arguing against that. I don't mind arguing if I have something to stand on. I couldn't find anything to stand on here.
Yeah. Quite honestly, I've never liked the rubber mulch. I don't like the way it smells when it's 110 degrees. We went by the studies that were given us at the time when we put it in, and we were assured that it was perfectly safe for children. And if you go back in the records, you'll see those reports. But I'm looking at the budget itself for this, and I realize that $115,000 is a lot of money. But removal's $27,000, landfilling is $19,000. Replacement cost with the wood chips is only $22,000, but spreading it is $35,040. So couldn't we like whittle that off, the $35,000, and get volunteers? And I know some guys with a little bit of light heavy equipment, and I know that drives you guys crazy when I start talking about volunteers.
Wage and stuff, that's
Yeah.
where I get gray.
Well, that's why we have to take it back and kind of think about, there might be a way to do this cheaper, but we might have to put it in different categories or some kind of, I don't know, get a nonprofit to oversee it, something. But spreading $35,000 just for spreading it out, and I realize that's not like two people with a rake. That's.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a front loader, yeah. But it's a small little bulldozer thing. Yeah, it's not a big one. So maybe we could just start a discussion on this, and maybe you can continue in your ad hoc committee, Jason, I don't know, with you and Gus. But maybe there's a way we can go at this a park at a time.
Well, I am totally comfortable saying right here on the record, if we can find a way to where volunteers are allowed, I will put gloves on and I will be there spreading it. So yes, if we can put resources, if we can find legality to ensure that we're able to use volunteer labor for the spreading, count me in. I will work to spread the word. I agree with that. But I don't want to set up this expectation if already I can see Jose looking uncomfortable over this topic.
Yes, I did ask him already.
Mayor and council, if I can, I just want to have council think about the volume of material and why why the cost is reflective of why it is the amount that it is. The estimate is for 959 cubic yards. And if you simply add a 0 on that, that's about how many wheelbarrows we're talking about. That's a lot of volunteers.
But that's every park all at once.
Right. Just to give you the context, though, it's quite a bit of volunteer work.
It could be done with front loaders and multiple people at each park, at different event days, multiple people raking. It could be done.
Or even if he pioneered the process and the volunteers offset some of the labor costs. Of course, the contractor has to be willing to do that. And that already
Madam Mayor.
I want to bring this back to the issue at hand. It's basically we can probably. I believe that there is council direction for figuring out how we can bring down some costs, particularly the spreading costs, and we could probably address that at a later time. So if any of all the technical questions have been answered at this time. If you have any questions for Hector or for the city engineer or
Yeah.
okay.
City engineer, I would like to hear what would be the appropriate way to get this started in a professional, reliable, and safe way.
obviously, there's a proposal in front of us. I would suggest we hire a contractor to do the job professionally. If we're gonna use volunteers, then the logistics come in, because we're gonna have heavy loaders around volunteers. And that becomes a safety issue, in my opinion. You just don't use construction equipment around people wandering around with rakes. I'll invite Hector up here too to talk about the logistics of placing that much material, because it gets delivered to the corp yard. It doesn't get delivered to the parks. We would be responsible for moving it from the corp yard to the individual parks, because you're gonna have, 1,000 cubic yards. So Hector, take it away.
Yeah, yeah, tell what the operation will look like.
Madam Mayor, City Council members and staff, yeah, I agree with Mark. It's just a tremendous amount of work. It's 1,000 cubic yards, and having volunteers, I think it's a great idea, but just having volunteers without any experience around heavy equipment can turn ugly really quick. I know it's a big, large amount that we have to deal with, but I think my personal opinion is, if we're going to go forward with this, is to go ahead and hire a professional to do it. We don't want anybody to get hurt. We want to get it done right. And if you guys visually want to see the amount of work, more than happy to walk you guys out there. It's just a tremendous amount of work, and we don't have the manpower to even, do one of the parks. So I'm just looking at you guys for recommendations, but my personal opinion is to hire a professional to do it, just because of the amount of work and the amount of effort that it's going to take to complete this project.
Thank you. So I actually have a question for the city attorney and possibly the city manager. So I'm just glancing over at the 2014 file. First of all, it's a consent calendar item. So did it ever actually come to a public meeting, before it was just put on a consent calendar and passed?
Mayor, if I can just seek clarification, do you mean
The original grant, I'm just looking at Gus's pieces of paper he has right here.
It was approved on the consent calendar, but I'm 99% sure there was discussion about that.
There was discussion. Okay. So since CalRecycle, granted us this material for $25,000, we can't be the only municipality in California that is facing this issue. It was completely inappropriate for this material to be put in play areas. It's not a material that is approved for contact with children. I was just at Santa Rosa Airport coming home over the weekend, and there it was in the parking area. I mean, I don't like seeing it there, but that's an appropriate place. It's like we don't have people or dogs or anybody coming in contact with it. It's just for the parking area. So what I'm wondering is if there's any possibility to make a complaint to CalRecycle and tell them that they need to underwrite some of our replacement costs on this. I'd also like to see us notify our assembly member and our state senator that we have been supplied with material that is not appropriate for playgrounds and been assured that it is safe, and now we are getting information back that it is not. So is that something that we could pursue?
So of course we could contact CalRecycle, and I mean that's kind of one of the things that, and I don't know if that has been done already. I think the contact has been there, but we could also be contacting them and making a demand, seeing if that went anywhere. But I know that the discussions, I think staff did call CalRecycle to find out what they thought about the product now, and I think that they weren't using it anymore, or they.
That is our understanding that, this was a program that was in vogue for a period of time, that's been since discontinued. There's a lot of logistics, obviously, to recycling rubber. And CalRecycle, one of the things, obviously, we were really seeking was information about the health concerns. And CalRecycle, they have quite a bit of resources on their website around this issue. But they have not taken a position that this is a toxic material or otherwise adverse health impacts. I think that's something I think the council's weighing in as part of their decision-making process, and being judicious and concerned about the community. But we haven't seen the, the weight of evidence suggests that this is really toxic material that we can then file a claim against the state. But that would be something that would have to be, borne out with additional research. I think that the issue is, what we're asking council tonight is there consensus to remove it? And if there is, and then replace it, what we've provided are cost estimates. We ultimately would need to do a budget adjustment. What we can do, if council supports this concept, is really work with our contractors to get as competitive prices as we can. In an effort to bring this forward quickly for council's consideration, we included one cost proposal. We can look to other contractors to give us other proposals. We can also work with Recology to see as our franchise solid waste hauler in the community, if there's opportunities to reduce the cost for them to provide the service, so that we're kind of trying to get the cost down, because we do realize it's pretty significant when you look at it, and we can, with council's direction, again, assuming you support the idea of moving forward with removal and replacement, give staff direction to go back, seek ways in which we can minimize the cost. We can also look and work with our parks team, our public works staff, to see if there are logistical ways to get the material placed and lower the cost. That's kind of what I hear council saying tonight. And obviously what we wanted to do really is just bring this forward, because there's been a lot of dialogue in the community for your consideration, and make sure you were supportive of this idea. And if so, we'll ask contractors to sharpen their pencils. We can seek alternatives, bids, and then bring it back.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make the recommendation that that we get consensus from the City Council to remove the rubber mulch from all of the playgrounds. On page 141, item number 1 and item number 2 kind of lays out how the ad hoc committee is recommending that we remove them. First in City Park, second in Vintage Meadows, then Clark Street, and then Ferber. And that decision was made as those are the most heavily used.
Had to do with sun exposure as well.
Exactly. So let the ad hoc committee with staff handle the details of cutting the cost down, getting it done. But tonight, just give us consensus to move forward with it.
Yes, we are in summer already. We already have had very high temperatures. And, contacting the senator, the supervisor,
That can be done later.
I mean,
Later.
that's what I'm saying, that effort is going to be later. Now, what is the timeline that we're talking about here? That's something that I'm concerned about. And then another thing, if it doesn't, since we're already in summer, what is going to be the action by Public Works, I guess, to advise people that this is a problem and to beware until it's removed? I mean, what's the procedure here?
Well, I would think that the work would just happen unless there's a verified, that the city has obtained verified studies that wouldn't put a sign or anything like that or advertise. I think that this is right now, the council is doing this because there's been some reports. I'm not sure if we've been contacted by anybody saying you have to remove them legally or anything like that.
No.
I wouldn't put out any kind of flyers or anything like that to that nature. I think that council giving direction and staff working, they could have signs up saying currently replacing whatever it is, but that's as far as I would go.
Yeah, I would just like the ad hoc committee to take it from here, and we'll get it done sooner rather than later. Council members Turner's boy plays in one of those.
So I think that there is
He could be
consensus. We'll
kept
go
from
ahead
it.
and believe there's consensus on all of the items. I would just like to thank the public for coming forward on this item. It was people like you who took a stand on Roundup. And so I would encourage you, instead of, you you got your win and go away. Please continue to be involved, and please continue to be involved with, the school board, which unfortunately is the same night, and with the parks and the city council, because, yeah, it's because of you and your interest in this that this has been changed. But I would like to just reiterate too, obviously I think there's consensus to move, sounds like there's consensus to move forward on this, but I'd also be very interested in reporting our concerns to Cal Recycle, because the fact is they were looking for a place to put old tires, and they decided that they were going to give them away to communities who were financially challenged, just like Cloverdale is. And it's just absolutely inexcusable. And while I want to go ahead and approve the budget item as it is, and it's going to hurt, we're going to probably need to make other adjustments in other areas. I want to seriously look at recouping that money, because we paid them $25,000 to take essentially their materials that I'm sure someone knows were of questionable quality, and I'm just furious about that we are the city of Cloverdale is having to bear this financial burden. It's just ridiculous. And I want to make sure that we work with the League of Cities as well, and let them know that the actions that we're choosing to move forward with. And I want to make sure that our state legislators know, because it may require legislation from them next year for us and any other communities to recoup this money, because we cannot be the only city that has been hit with this expense, and it's completely unfair. So I just want to make sure that we follow up with that as well, so that we can try to recoup some of this loss.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with Madam Mayor. I just want to make sure that when this is all arranged in the ad hoc committee, that it does not add any additional work to the Public Works personnel, and that seriously considered hiring professionals to do this well once and for all.
Do you need a motion vote from us?
No.
It's a budget item, so.
No, well, we're going to be coming back with some, I'm sure, with the solution as far as the contract or whatever is going to be needed, unless it's under the authority. But just getting a vote, that would be good. That way we could get a clear direction by the council.
Okay.
It's in the same realm, okay? Definitely hear the instruction. Definitely want to move forward. At our last, what we called a special meeting of the Public Works Department, we had to dissolve the ad hoc committee. We had a TBD on our next meeting pending the results of what this discussion was. So while we're here, and I know some of the members who would like to be able to join are here, I'd like to hear a recommendation on a date in which we could have that. And I am kind of putting you on the spot, I do apologize, but I'd like to get a date in here so that we just know that it's moving forward.
Well, I'll be off next week, but,
Councilmember Turner, are you seeking a date for your next Public Works subcommittee?
Yes, because, and forgive me here, but what I'm hearing from my colleagues is, we're happy to let you move forward with this, but we don't want feet dragged, and I want to do my due diligence. We don't even have a date in the calendar right now. We were waiting on this discussion, and while we're here, I thought it might be an easy time for any of the people involved. Gus will need to be there, myself, we could kind of get that hammered out.
Because the subcommittee can schedule a special meeting in accordance with the Brown Act, so long as the agenda is published 24 hours in advance of the meeting.
So your next meeting is July 23rd. So did you want to, so probably not next week, but the following week?
So yeah, I mean, the week of the, yeah, we could do Tuesday the 9th. It looks like the conference room's available.
You want to go ahead and set that up for the special meeting
So
for Public Works?
special meeting Tuesday.
Tuesday, July the 9th, and it'll be at 4 p.m., please.
At 4 p.m. And Mayor, in regards to your inquiry about whether you need a vote, I think it would be valuable to go on the record. I think I hear council support for this, and it's it's very affirmative to say we as a council unanimously take a vote assuming you vote in that direction, to direct staff to seek removal And that way, it's quite clear the council direction on this, assuming you'd like to vote in that manner.
Would someone like to,
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve city staff to move forward with replacing the rubberized mulch with a wood chip product.
is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
We have a roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Beat you to it.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Hector. Appreciate it. All right, last but not, well, is it last? Second to last, we're getting there. Item number 7, discussion of remaining conditions of approval for Sonoma County Vintners Co-op. Sorry, Kevin. It's getting late.
He's used to it.
I guess we'll hear from the other Kevin first.
So, Mayor, council members, this is our a continued discussion of the Sonoma County Co-ops project at 28145 Old Redwood Highway. At the March 13th meeting, the council did conditionally approve the construction of a 100,000 square foot warehouse. At that meeting, it was decided to bring a couple items back for discussion, and that's what we're going to be doing tonight. One of those was the undergrounding of the utilities, and you can see the condition as it was written in your staff report, and also the east-facing facade was another condition to be brought back for further discussion. The applicant did provide a study about the undergrounding. You can see it was also an attachment to your staff report. It does indicate an economy of scale doing a larger project versus a smaller project. Their frontage would be about 220,000 versus, and that's 470 feet, versus an 819-foot stretch, which would be about 393,000. One of the key points that the report makes is in terms of the removal of poles, the co-op undergrounding the utilities in front of their facility would not really eliminate the number of poles, rather would move one to the north and one to the south, so the two that are kind of in the middle of the block on their property would be moved, so there'd be no gain or no loss of any poles. The applicant is still requesting that the undergrounding be deferred until the formation of an assessment district. We did come up with some options that are not included in your staff report that I'd like to present to the council now. The first option would be that we just continue to require the undergrounding of the utilities as the project was initially conditioned. The second option would be that we ask the developer to make a deposit of their fair share of the amount of what would be undergrounding. And we have some numbers, but we'd like to work on the numbers a little bit. That would be held in an account for future use when the assessment district is formed. Their portion of the obligation would be paid. They would still be obligated to help pay for other infrastructure improvement in the area, but the undergrounding of utilities would be covered. The third option would be just to do as the applicant has requested and defer the undergrounding until the formation of an assessment district. The other item was the east-facing facade. It was kind of talked about that the facade didn't meet the design standards because it was kind of a blank wall, a long blank wall. I think the applicant did a pretty good job in addressing that concern. They've added some articulations, pop-outs, wood doors, trellis, varied parapet heights. In staff's opinion, the project now meets the intent of the design standards. And I know the architect is here, so he can provide some more details on that. So what we're suggesting is whatever the direction is tonight, that we'll bring back a revised resolution from the original approval of March 13th, probably put it on the consent calendar, just to make sure that we have an accurate resolution for the project. And so that concludes my presentation, and we have the whole applicant team here to answer questions as well as staff. Thank you.
Actually, I do have one quick question. Kevin, what was the estimate of the deposit that we would be asking the co-op to make?
We have a preliminary report. It was, what was it, David? 77 or 75,000.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to be really brief tonight. I think the staff did a great job. Thank you, Director Thompson, for really sort of encapsulating what we were trying to express. This was more of a fact-finding mission for us. We really went into it looking at, okay, what's it really going to cost? We hired a consultant who, all they do is underground utilities, design, they are registered with PG&E, they get these things approved all the time. We felt like we had a reputable estimate to work from. We pieced together 3 components, just the frontage of our property. One that sort of made logical sense from an existing overhead crossing from Highway 101, and then one that took in the bigger picture of South Cloverdale, extending down Kelly Road and extending further south towards the property that's known as the Kelly Gate property. Anyway, our request tonight is really we're requesting that the council consider the deferral of the relocation and undergrounding of overhead utilities. And we're also requesting that the council approve the facade modifications. Just really briefly, I just wanted to direct you to some figures in your packet. Figure 1, which is basically the first photograph that shows the limits of the undergrounding along simply the frontage of the Vintners Co-op project as we originally conditioned.
Hang on, Kevin.
165.
Okay, thank you. So figure 1, 165, and it shows an aerial image of the extent of the undergrounding just along the frontage of the Vintners Co-op as we were originally conditioned to do. And as you can see, we would be removing 2 poles that are in the right-of-way and moving them to either end of the property. Then we have to install duplicate utility vaults on either end of the property. Once we looked at this, we decided we would look a little bit further. And David, if you could give me the page of figure 2.
166.
166. It shows the undergrounding of utilities from Kelly Road all the way up to the Vintners Co-op, which was a recently approved project and it's now been constructed. You can see here that you start gaining some more benefit from doing a larger scale undergrounding. In fact, you remove 3 poles and you're left with 2 existing poles on either end. I think this sort of starts heading in the direction of the intent of the policy I think the council adopted was really to start eliminating the poles, make things safer, get it underground. The last exhibit is just showing the extents of the 3 segments that are listed in the cost estimates. And as you can see, all 3 of these segments, with the exception of 1 pole at the intersection of Kelly Road where the overhead utilities come across Highway 101 from the east, all of those would be underground. There would be no poles in that area, ideally, with the exception of that 1 overhead crossing. So our request is, again, to defer the relocation and undergrounding until the second district is formed and the city undertakes a area-wide undergrounding. I think there's a good opportunity for all of that to happen fairly quickly. There is some development activity in that area that could help support it. With regard to, the option of putting a deposit or a good faith deposit towards the undergrounding, I've spoken to our client and they are open to that discussion. What those figures mean, what kind of contractual arrangement we have with the city would still need to be worked out. And then one last thing, I wanted to give Greg Ledoux an opportunity to come talk about the design. Thanks.
I forgot to mention there's a revised facade on the dais. It's the same one that was in the staff report. It's just a bigger version. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. My name is Greg Ledoux. I'm the project architect. We have done considerable modifications to that east elevation. I'll just run through the bullet points here. I have the same information in your packet, but I'll just reiterate. We altered the height of the parapet. Has actually been reduced in 4 locations so that there's a up and down across the facade, the total facade. Those locations, the recess is 12 feet long and approximately 30 inches deep to provide the vertical relief that you'd asked for previously.
These pop out.
At those same 4 locations, the depth of that is 6 inches, and that adds a horizontal facade relief as well as the vertical facade relief. So I think we're doing that in two different directions. Within the two central arched elements that we had provided previously, we're now providing a large wooden winery door, which I think is a really interesting architectural feature for this building and speaks to the contents. And within the four remaining arched elements, we're providing a stainless steel espalier, which will have vines growing up on it, so that'll add color to the building as well as some horizontal relief. Between those two central arched elements, we're providing a wooden trellis that is projected 3 feet from the building. So that'll provide a nice shadow line on the building. We also are providing some faux lantern elements, again at the human scale. So I think those were the things that we discussed, and hopefully we hit the mark on that. Be happy to answer any questions.
I think it's a great improvement.
About the whole project, or just?
Well, maybe just for the architect, so.
No, not for the architect.
I don't mind making a comment. Being someone who, I watched the video, was a little criticizing last time. I'm very happy with this. It looks great. Thank you. Thank you for hearing us. I appreciate that.
No, actually, I was going to say almost the identical
Yeah.
thing. It looks good. Thanks, you
Yeah,
guys.
it actually is, it's
Quite a difference.
It's in compliance with our design criteria as they're laid out, so I'm happy with this. So actually, at this time, unless there's anything else for the architect, did you have, we could open
No,
it up to.
not for the architect, for Kevin.
Or for Kevin, okay. Now, let's go ahead and open it up to.
Thank you.
The public. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the project? And please state your name for the record.
Patrick King, Cloverdale residence, longtime business owner. Yeah, I just got some questions on it. I personally think this is a bad use of land, space, and resources that we have in Cloverdale. And to change my mind, I guess I would be asking a few questions. One is, what is Cloverdale getting from this project? What tax revenues, and what are we really getting for this type of a project coming in? For two, second question would be, we have a school being built right behind it. What's the traffic study? How many trucks are coming in, what hours? And we have kids that are going to be going downtown, go to the 7-Eleven. I mean, really, what kind of traffic? To me, I would think this is a nightmare for the type of trucking that's going to have access right through, that part of our, we don't have a traffic light, we don't have anything down there. So we're planning a project like this. So that would be one question I'd like to hear answered tonight. What's the volume of trucks in and out? What's the hours of trucks coming in and out? Is there additional routes that they can go off the Dutcher Creek exit instead of coming through that part? What kind of employment is a project like this have? What are the assets? What are we getting is really what I want to know. The security and dangers that come with a project like this. I just don't see, I see a much better use of land. That's just my opinion. Is there better projects than this one could be designed in?
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to come forward at this time? Okay, so does the staff want to start in on some of the questions from Mr. King?
Yes, well, first, thank you, Mr. King, for comments on the project. It just would like council to be mindful that most, if not all, the issues that Mr. King brought forward, including the traffic impacts, employment, discussion on revenue, discussion on the actual land use, was all subject to a public hearing that the council conducted. And the council's outcome was approval of the project. Really what we're here tonight to do is to discuss the conditions of approval that were outstanding when the council did a fairly significant review of the project. All that information that Mr. King did bring forward are all very good questions and are things that were addressed in the original staff report. We would take a few minutes to kind of bring that back up if we wanted to go back into those details to look at the traffic impacts. There was a traffic impact study done. The project was subject to environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. It was distributed in accordance with appropriate review period, and there were mitigation measures that were put in place to address, potentially significant impacts. One of which was traffic, and because I think it's it's definitely a concern of staff. And I know there was quite a bit of debate around the issue of employment and the economic benefits this project would bring. But some of that's kind of embedded in your own zoning ordinance. That's the nature of the types of uses that are provided for in this particular zoning district. So it kind of starts to begin a larger discussion around zoning and the general plan and what kind of land uses you want to see. Because in my experience, these are the kind of buildings that you tend to see in Sonoma County that come with light or an industrial zoning designation in this area. They tend to be kind of these types of storage projects that aren't large employment generators. And there are various strategies to employ to address that, but it requires a lot of consideration and involvement by the community, the chamber, council, planning commission. Just wanting, I'd be happy, Kevin, maybe sit down with Mr. King and kind of walk through that. But otherwise, all those things were discussed previously as part of the public hearing, both at the commission and at the council.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kevin, did Bob Mortson ever call you? No. Okay, I'll follow up with him. Bob owns a winery, and he's looking to move it up here to the south side of town. And I hooked him up with Kevin to see about land available. I like the redesign that you did of the facade of the building. I think it kind of captures what we were looking for, something other than just a flat wall that runs that distance. So I think that's great. Patrick, you're absolutely right. All the questions that you brought up were vented at one of the hearings that we had. And, my big concern is that the property tax that building will generate is something like $30,000, I think we figured out, which is nothing. I mean, that doesn't even pay for paving of the streets. So under the district that we're trying to form down there, they'll pay into that, and hopefully that will be money set aside to do repairs to the road in that whole area. As far as the traffic light goes, the stop sign there, right alongside Starbucks, that's county land. I'm sorry, Caltrans. So, we don't control that, but I'm sure the day will come when we'll have to sit down with them and see about doing something at that intersection. But you bring up some good points, and I think we've addressed them. So, and the other thing I'm hoping, too, at some point that the co-op actually does a little fulfillment house there with their wine clubs, and maybe we can get some tax dollars generated from that. So, but we'll see.
I would just say and add that you're absolutely right. And the fact is that that entire area south of town should have had a specific plan. And that's what we should have been working on instead of a lot of the nonsense that's been going on the last year and a half. So, the fact is that, fortunately, the builder and Kevin have been responsive to our concerns, which were exactly those. And this is not the best deal, and this is not the best use of that property. But the fact is, it's zoned for it, and it meets all the requirements. And so we're trying. I'm in the place where I have to make the best deal that I can on this, because it's not their fault that we didn't get our act together and do a better job of planning for that area south of town. That's me talking for myself, not for the council. And I'm sure the vice mayor has something to add on that point.
Well, I just would like to say that, Patrick, something else it does is intangible. It just kind of jumpstarts that area. Other businesses are going to all of a sudden see some construction. part of the annexation will include different parcels down there. Payless storage will now come into the city. So it's going to jumpstart development in that whole area when they start seeing the tilt-ups go up. I think it's going to be beneficial for the whole area. So, and plus, we'll have all that land already annexed in, so that when a developer comes to the city, he doesn't have to go through that red tape. So that's it, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Essentially, there are two, do I have this right? There are essentially two bullet points, so to speak. One is the elevation, and the second is the undergrounding. So actually, I'd like to go back to, take us back to the council and get an idea of where people are on the undergrounding options. So Kevin, could you repeat those three
Sure.
for us?
The first one would be to stick with the original condition, which was require the developer to underground all the utilities leading into the new building. The second one is to require the developer to make a deposit towards the future assessment district, and that would then pay for his portion of the undergrounding. And again, he would still be obligated to help pay for the other infrastructure pieces that would occur down there, sewer, water, streets, those things. The third option is what the developer is requesting, which is defer the undergrounding until the formation of an assessment district.
Actually, I'll go ahead and jump back to the elevation. Is everyone, it sounds like there's consensus on the elevation.
Mhm.
So the other item would be on the undergrounding. Where do people stand? I'll start to my left, if I can. Unless you want me to start at my right, Jason.
I'm trying to understand the difference you described between having them pay a deposit towards the assessment district or having them just wait. Is it just minus the deposit?
Right. And just, there's an example, when the Ferber Center was built, we didn't need a light at a traffic signal at that time. Well, we did require them to provide a deposit, which we're using now to help pay for the light. It's not exactly the same example, but it would be, once the assessment district is formed, we would have their deposit just jumpstart the electrical undergrounding.
You know, I find myself inclined to support the deposit. Kevin made a comment that the applicant's already open to the concept. We just got to hash out the details. It puts a little gas in the tank for when the assessment district gets there. But that's kind of where I'm landing.
No, actually, I'm agreeable with this. It makes more sense to do a long project as opposed to all these little sections.
So option two.
Assessment district
Assessment
with
district with
a
deposit.
pre-deposit.
Yes.
Deposit, okay. So, Martin?
The same.
I'll do that as well. If it's a dollar amount that becomes uncomfortable for you, please make sure you let us know.
Oh, I'm sure we'll hear about it.
Kevin had said $70,000 and
75.
75, and there's still some pencil work to be done on that. But if it's an issue, I just want to get that project moving, and I want that slab down before the rain comes. So.
Yeah, and I would actually ask Nick Wilson, the general manager, to come up and actually speak to that. But one thing I will say from a technical standpoint is, with the assessment district and all the studies that you're moving towards getting, you're going to get a preliminary engineering report, which will include some estimates. And it's when those estimates are really put together is when you sort of determine everyone's share. So, you know, we kind of have some idea, but there's a lot more to the overall assessment district. So just breaking out the underground utilities needs to be thought about.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Another thing we wanted to point out for the applicant is that we would, we ask for it at certificate of occupancy, so you wouldn't have to, come up with the deposit before the building is even built, so it would be later on.
And the other thing, I know the co-op is going to want to join our Chamber of Commerce, and Nina is right there, and she's got the applications. So, you know, that's just part of being part of Cloverdale, you know, so.
Did you want to go ahead and come up and?
We've been pushing you today.
My name is Nick Wilson. I'm the general manager of the Sonoma County Nurse Co-op. What can I answer for you?
So what are your thoughts on the making a deposit toward the assessment district?
Well, we've had a lot of discussions, all the way around about this, and looking at the big picture, I think it probably makes a lot of sense all the way around. It gives you guys some money to kind of get going with what you're trying to do. I don't think it really hurts us too much because we pay for it anyway. So yeah, I'm open to it, especially if it moves the project forward to get this going, which is, as we expressed, is really quite important. The timing and trying to get things done before the building season's over this year.
Any other questions for Mr. Wilson? Okay, we'll bring it back to the council, and I believe that you have consensus around the two items, which is the elevation and the undergrounding. We were looking for them making a deposit toward the assessment district. Is that clear direction?
That's clear, and I'm thinking on the next council agenda on the consent calendar, we'll have a revised resolution. We attached the resolution with all the conditions, so we'll include what was directed tonight and put that on the consent calendar, and that way we have a clean resolution with all the conditions.
Okay, great. Is everybody happy?
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. All right, well, we're moving on to, oh, thank God, the last item. Okay. And we have replacement of office trailer at City Hall. And who's taking the lead on this?
I'll take that, Mayor.
Okay.
So item 8 before you tonight is to consider options for the replacement of the office trailer at City Hall that supports office operations for our public works staff and our building department staff. What we're seeking is council direction, and we're also, depending on council's direction, asking for potential authority to negotiate and execute a lease agreement. Just by way of background, as this council is fully aware, we experienced fairly significant rain events over the winter period, starting in fall of 2018 and extending into winter and spring of 2019. During that period of time, the trailer that some call City Hall Annex began to experience wet conditions on the interior. For reference, we think that the trailer is about 20 years old, which is pretty closely approximate its useful life.
It was used 20 years ago.
I mean, 20 years ago is when it was placed, I
Right.
think. No data on exactly the age of the structure itself. But city staff, took a number of efforts to try to address the leaking roof that was resulting in the interior becoming moist, including tarping the roof. Unfortunately, it's just the design of this type of structure is a lot of the drainage is in the walls themselves, and you start to have to kind of dismantle the trailer.
I don't think you need to convince us.
Okay.
About the condition
All
of
right.
the trailer.
Well,
Let's
just want to make sure for the record there's a background here. And so staff evaluated options, which focus in terms of the budget on replacement of the existing trailer, in a financing strategy to do so, which was included in the now adopted fiscal year 1920 budget. Since that time, there was an additional option brought forward and the council discussed at the budget workshop to look at options for entering into an agreement with the Performing Arts Center to fund office improvements that could then in turn support the chamber moving and freeing up some office space within downtown that can support business operations for City Hall. The cost estimates are included in the packet, which were provided by the CPAC board members. Last but not least, and most recently, an option came forward where a retail space that's available in downtown, that's approximately 1,200 square feet, just in relative close proximity to City Hall, that does not require use of retail frontage space, which obviously is vital to our business community. at about $1.25 a square foot. And the cost estimate for that is also included in your packet. What we're asking direction tonight is for support for one of the three options. Really, where staff sees it is the most viable option for your consideration is option 3. We've taken a look at the space. And we've identified that there's a need for some relatively minor tenant improvements, but otherwise it could be rather quickly occupied and utilized for support office space for our staff. There's 3 offices, a large conference room, and so it could also accommodate and meet other needs of the city to have additional meeting space. And if council supports that option, we know the owner of the building is here tonight, and has expressed a desire and interest to lease the facility, the space to the city. We would be asking if you support that option to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a lease agreement with the owner, Mr. Franco Deghi, that would support our ability to move into that space fairly quickly. That particular option, however, would require a budget amendment, so we would be planning to bring that back for ultimately for council's consideration. It would really result in kind of revising the budget because we have funds budgeted for replacement, and we'd have to kind of reevaluate how the funding would work for leasing the space, because we would utilize some different funding sources, because we did identify public works impact fees or corporate impact fees for the replacement of the trailer, and those probably aren't applicable in the case of leasing a facility. There's a lot more details. I think one last item, there was correspondence received by CPAC board member intended to bring it forward. I think the idea is that they're supportive of the idea of our need to find a quick resolution to our staffing space needs, but they're also with that indicating that there's a need for funding support. Staff really sees that as kind of a separate issue and discussion at this point, and we seek your direction on that. But what we're asking for and what's agendized this evening is an outline of options for really meeting the needs for our public works and our building staff.
Thank you. So any questions? Go ahead, Martin.
Yes. I see that there's a 10,000 item for kitchenette and signage. I would like more explanation of what that $10,000 is going to go towards.
Sure, happy to address a question. That's a great question, Councilmember Cruz. I do want to note that the cost estimates that were included in the packet are really very preliminary at this point. Obviously, I want to spend a bunch of time doing analysis on something that the council may or may not support. But if council supports that option, we'll evaluate and really sharpen our pencils. When we looked at the space, we do realize there is the need. There's no kitchenette there, so the expectation would be to install some cabinetry with a sink, the appropriate plumbing to support, general office space needs. A refrigerator, obviously plumbing for a sink, coffee maker, those kinds of things. And so we just want to make sure that if council supports that there's adequate dollars in place to be able to accommodate that work. There's also just other minor tenant improvement things like signage, possibly removing the carpet, things like that. We didn't spend all the time getting all the cost estimates to do yet. And so we could refine that number and come back and really show the detail for that expenditure. So that's a really rough approximation.
Okay.
You're looking for just general approval or input on the three options.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, in regards to that, I want to make sure that the IT expenses are included.
Correct, and
Is that
I mean
bad?
that would be a good reference to those
Okay.
one-time expenses. There's definitely the need for some IT infrastructure to support, a kind of city hall annex space. So that's what we've kind of looking at in that cost estimate that we put together.
And then I just have one more question. And I know this is a detail, but it's an important one, to secure the fee of $1,500 a month. When you execute the agreement, Jose, could it be for a particular period of time so that it's, not an ongoing expense that continues to grow?
Yes, usually we'll be working, and if that's where the council goes, we'll be working on obviously on a lease. You mean for the month, yeah, and it would have potentially a term there and everything, and I think that there's been discussions on potential term, but that would be something that would be in there for sure.
Okay, all right, that's fine, thank you.
I think staff would anticipate, at least a 12-month or an annual term with some renewal provisions. And then, as we discuss other, space needs or as they become available, it gives us some flexibility in the future.
Okay, thank you.
No, I'm in favor of it. Here we go, though, another $38,000 to the general fund. We just, to remove the playground rubber mulch, we're talking 110, so we've got a big budget adjustment.
Yeah, staff does anticipate, and we obviously, we need to look at this more closely in context of what we have in the budget currently, but, some of the enterprise funds we think could support
help with that.
portions of the cost.
Okay.
But we would need to look at that carefully and see what's in the budget already. So there may not be a need to amend the budget based on what funds were already budgeted towards the Public Works trailer.
Gotcha.
But if council supports that option, we'll do that evaluation. and bring
Okay.
it back.
Well, I think of the three, this is probably the best. It's move-in ready. There's no construction that has to be done. We're done with that trailer in the back. Maybe we could, bonfire, yeah. Maybe we can push that fence back a little bit and put the porta potties there for Friday Night Live, so we get them out of the street. There's some good space there we could use. So I support that, but I'm also concerned about the Performing Arts Center. We need to have a conversation about that. I think tomorrow the finance police is meeting at 4 o'clock, and I know it's not agendized, but maybe we can talk about that somehow tomorrow and get some feel of how we can help support another nonprofit in town. So.
Did you have a favorite that you'd want to support?
So I like option 3, the building's ready. Franco, thank you. He let me come tour, let me bring my kid with me. And while we got fingerprints all over all the glass in that building, I really appreciated the natural light that was in there, appreciated its size. But one of the things that concerned me about this is for us to go with option number 3, it creates the perception that we're not going to do anything with CPAC. So I really appreciate Gus's comments that this will be brought forward to a subcommittee, because I want to see what options we have to make improvements in that area. And I'll just touch on this lightly. Gus spoke during our budget planning meeting, and he kind of, not to paint too broad of a brush, but he sits back and he goes, we need more revenue. Well, if improving the CPAC Performing Arts Center allows them to build out their programs and create more foot traffic, maybe those are the little calculated steps that we take to create more revenue on the other side. I've found that my time in public service has killed my belief that any one big thing is going to fix anything. It really has to be many calculated improvements. So while I absolutely support option number 3, that is with the language that I'm hearing from my colleagues, that we're still going to look at what we can't do for CPAC. So thank you.
I appreciate that. When we started the idea of the build-out in the front to put the chamber over here, it was one of the driving forces is I wanted to see Mark and those guys get out of that leaky, nasty trailer. And there was nothing available down here to put them in. So that's when I started thinking, well, maybe if we could move things around, because we've got to get them out of there, certainly before the rains start. But now Franco's building is available. I think it would be, it's kind of a no-brainer. that you would go with leasing this property for 38,000 as opposed to anything else, because it's more immediate. So I would go with option number 3 also.
I support, though there's pretty wide consensus, I think, for option number 3. I completely support getting it. It's like manna from heaven. The place just sort of dropped in our laps, and I got to tour with my dog, and she didn't bite anybody, so it was a successful outing. And so I would support that, but I'm also, completely support pursuing the build out in CPAC as well, because that would allow, and as long as the chamber is still amenable to that. I think it's a great location. I think it would be a great asset to the building and to this nonprofit, and so I would like to continue moving that along and agendizing that where appropriate. Okay, so it sounds like you have pretty good consensus. I don't think you need a vote from us unless I'm wrong. And I'm sorry, there's one more thing from Councilmember Chris. So go ahead.
Yes, it's in regards to CPAC. I was really surprised that I didn't really see any proposals during the budget meetings. And it is important that we support CPAC. It just means so much to all of us, and it's our meeting place. It's beautiful. But I think that maybe that is something that we have to thoroughly discuss with time, not just, on the sidelines on the meeting tomorrow, but something that we really need to take seriously.
No, let's just look at adding that. So I think you have pretty clear direction to go ahead and move forward with the third option, and then let's take a look at the build out and other ways we can support CPAC as well.
So, Mayor, I would request a motion if you do choose option number 3. As mentioned in the agenda item, the title, we are looking for also the authority for the city manager to negotiate and execute a lease agreement.
Is that above his pay grade, or is that above your signature authority?
Yes.
I thought it was going to be under the, okay, so we do need a motion then.
Right.
Okay, great. Would someone like to make a motion?
Gus, make the motion.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion. I'm trying to let the new folks get used to making motions, so.
They were good tonight.
Yeah, actually they were. I'd like to recommend that we authorize the city manager to enter into a lease with the property owner of, the address, of 117B North Cloverdale Boulevard, to be used for city purposes.
Is there a second?
I will second.
I, with the caveat that the toilet seat that is shared with the store is always down.
You know what, that's a really good point. We might have to get an automatic one.
I'd prefer to have the toilet seat up, but we could discuss that later, but it's an aye.
It's Councilmember Brigham,
Aye.
Councilmember Turner,
Aye.
Mayor Bagby.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Franco.
All right,
you,
Franco,
Franco.
go easy on him, buddy. Make sure you go easy on him.
All right, so subcommittee items. The airport meets next on October 1st. And Finance Administration Police, we meet tomorrow afternoon.
All right, the Planning and Community Development Subcommittee will be on August 20th at 4 p.m. The Public Works, we announced earlier this evening. I just want to confirm we will be meeting on Tuesday, July 9th at 4 p.m. for a special meeting pertaining to rubberized mulch. However, our regularly scheduled Public Works Subcommittee will be on July the 23rd, 2019, 4 p.m. at your City Hall conference room.
All right. Joint fire.
Joint fire is pending. We're supposed to have a meeting soon in July because of abatement and so on. And then the school would be July 17th, I think it is. 15th, yeah.
Okay. Council reports.
Madam Mayor, I had the opportunity to attend a VA workshop at the library the other day, and what the Veterans Administration is trying to do is make the library a gathering of information for veterans so they can go in and find out where they could get help for a variety of things. But one of the individuals that was there was the young lady from Vine Ridge Assisted Living. Nina, I don't remember her name. Was it Marion? Maria? And she is planning a rather large recruitment process on July the 13th over at the Senior Center. And they're talking upwards of 30 employees, all levels, janitorial, nursing, cafeteria, laundry, just a slew of 30 folks they're looking for. And it's an opportunity for us to help those Cloverdalians that maybe need a better job or need to stay local to know about that. She's going to be putting up a poster. They're supposedly hanging a sign at the Citrus Fair. So it's July 13th, and I just recommend that we spread the word as a council. 10 to 1? Okay, thank you.
As you know, I attended the Redwood Empire meeting with Mayor Bagby, and after that I had a big parenthesis because of my father's illness and death. And on Sunday, I attended the first LGBTQI panel here at CPAC. Very well attended. I also toured, I served as a tour guide to Land Pass representative at Porterfield Creek this Monday in preparation for Friday's I Read Outside program for children. Then yesterday I visited and welcomed Alexander Valley Film Summer Camp. We have 2 Cloverdale students in that camp, and also went to the mariachi camp classes. I visited 3 classrooms, very well attended, very well organized, and we're all invited to their closing event on Friday around 5:30 at the gym, high school gym. I met with finance director regarding the budget and met with a librarian who is going to cooperate and read with the I Read outside on Friday, and also attended Christmas in June, raising funds for the Cloverdale Food Pantry.
We went to the mayor and council members thing in Roner Park. That was super cool. Other than that, I need to get it to you in writing.
I didn't have time to prepare mine, so I just have some quick notes. So June 13th, we went down to mayors and council members in Roner Park, had a wonderful meal, and saw the new library headquarters. I unfortunately did not get to do the tour because I had to vote. So
I forgot that one too.
I'm gonna schedule a redo, but we had a presentation by Grant Davis, who's the director or executive director of Sonoma Water on the Potter Valley project and that status. On the 14th, so I immediately, after dinner, I got in my car and went to Sacramento. The next day I had my League of Cities Policy Committee meeting, and we also received a legislative briefing from League staff on June 19th through the 22nd, I was at the League of Cities Executive Forum and Executive Meeting in Newport Beach. And though Newport Beach was wonderful, I can report that every Marriott conference room looks exactly the same, so I could have been in Des Moines. But we also got to have dinner outside and have a few little adventures. So, and good news on the rural information exchange project that I've been working on with members or council members from throughout the state. The League Executive Board approved a 1-year trial. In the next 6 months, we're going to be ramping up, and then we'll start our trial in January, which will go, so January through December of 2020, trying to have small cities exchange information with each other, explain why in more detail that maybe one size fits all legislation does not work for us, and just to network with council members throughout California with other cities that are about our size and have some of our challenges. And then just to wrap up, yesterday, my first day back, I attended the SCTA Measure M ad hoc committee that I'm on in Santa Rosa, and we talked about the measure that they will probably be bringing to the voters sometime next year. And that concludes my report.
And if you don't have a library card, definitely get one. That tour was cool. It's
Yeah,
way more than
yeah.
books. Way more than books.
And I have, it's on my list, and I'm gonna get that tour, because it sounds like it was the best deal ever.
Oh,
so.
it's wild. What they're able to do down there, the turnaround time on delivering books to even rural jurisdictions was amazing. So.
Okay, do you remember the number of books that they deal with every
Oh,
day?
that is gonna be a competition.
I do not.
That's on the next
It's
agenda.
on the next agenda, there we go. So we have a legislative report. We'd like to take that.
Mayor, Council, included in your packet is a letter of support for SB 5. It's to two different committee members, essentially the same letter. Just want to make sure that Council's apprised of our legislative efforts, that we've been working closely, particularly with Mayor Bagby and League of California Cities to ensure that we're supporting legislation that's in our interests and our goals to bring those forward that they're in the packet for council review and consideration.
City manager, city attorney report.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing left. All right, well, in that case, we will adjourn to our.
No, Madam Mayor, future agenda items or discussion items?
Certainly.
Earlier, I had mentioned CBDs that are being sold in non-licensed cannabis stores. I'm not quite sure how that falls, if that's truly a cannabis product or a hemp product, and is it regulated by our ordinance?
We'll be looking at our ordinance closer. Our ordinance deals with cannabis. They've been popping up everywhere. And right now, it's actually the state has been working on legislation as well on hemp, but they've been popping up at every nutrition, at every pharmacy. But through hemp,
It's at grocery outlet as well.
It's given the THC and the amount, it's below the definition, I guess, for the state, but that has been an issue that's popping up everywhere.
And it's not inexpensive. I was at Dahlia and Sage, and they have a little display. It's like $45 for a little bottle. CVS, the same thing. And, you know, I just fear that there's a perception out there in the community that this is the same product that's going to actually help their pains. And maybe it does, I don't know, but it's not regulated. You know, they don't know what's in that bottle.
We'll take a look at it, Vice Mayor, and we'll provide a report.
Thank you.
The reason that they don't is because it's not required that it's tested.
Exactly.
On any level. And it's usually so low. In some cases, they have tested it and there was nothing in it at all.
Yeah.
It was just like oil.
It's a rip-off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have anything else for future agenda items? Well, then on that note, we will adjourn until our next meeting. Thank you, staff, and thank you, audience, for sticking with us. Good night.
Thank you.